So welcome to the Codex panel. My name is Shannon, also known as Sari, and we have our expert guests who we're going to introduce just in case you somehow avoided them the whole weekend. But the intent of this panel discussion is to talk about what I refer to as the Codex, and actually I'd like to start off with a question of, did I make up that word, or is that what everybody else is calling this work?
Never heard it before.
All right, I think I made that up. I think I watched the Guild too much. Okay, so I mean, okay. So what do you refer to this work as?
Encyclopedia.
The encyclopedia. Okay. And do you see this as a direct replacement of the current big white book?
The big white book was a different thing. It's just a companion.
Okay.
You know, with history, the encyclopedia is going to be an encyclopedia.
Excellent. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So that's not what you're here to talk about. If you want to hit people with swords, it's next door. I'm sure you'll be hearing them throughout the hour. Okay, so again, we will have our expert panels introduce themselves and the work that they do in this area. Maria?
Hi, I'm Maria Simmons. I worked for Robert Jordan for many years and I'm currently working with him, with Brandon, Harriet, Alan on finishing the series, and then we're doing an encyclopedia.
And I'm Marvin Loxley. I park cars for Bandersnatch. No, you know. Alan Romanczuk.
How did you pronounce that again? Because
Romanczuk.
Romanczuk.
CC is like a CH.
And
We can have a spelling quiz at the end.
and I think just kind of to set the understanding, I mean, I think that most of it, top button.
Sorry.
Top button. I think a lot of us, know and respect a lot that you guys have been doing a lot of the research. Can you explain how you divide the research currently, or how you will be dividing it, the encyclopedia, if that's any different?
It's kind of
Organic.
random.
Yeah. Organic is the word for that.
Let's take it historically. I mean, Jim had his own set of notes initially, and Maria came on and did what?
Organized the notes because he had lots and lots of them disorganized. And then he realized he could use me, like give me a list, has so-and-so ever met so-and-so. What does the baby feel when it's being born? Stuff like that. And then Alan came on, and that went to him.
I'm still trying to figure out how a baby is born. But it's, because Maria had so many responsibilities at that point, I wound up taking a lot of the questions. So the way it would work was, back in the old days, Jim had these floppy disks, and he'd type out, a lot of questions, and it'd be sent upstairs to me, and I'd shove it in the machine and start answering the questions for him. And sometimes they were very easy to answer. Sometimes they took days of digging around to, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was like writing little essays on really fun topics, really obscure topics. And so among all of us, we wound up having a pretty large computer file or set of files about a lot of the questions that deal with the Wheel of Time. So now our job is to really start organizing it as an encyclopedia. And we have questions for you before the end, if we may.
Go ahead.
Regarding that. Go ahead.
Yeah, if we wait, we might never get to it.
But let's
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, Harriet, if you'd like to introduce yourself and...
Hi, I'm Harriet McDougal. I'm the editor of The Wheel of Time, and I unwisely signed a contract several years ago with Jim to write the encyclopedia. And so it will now have Maria and Alan's names on it as well.
As far as the origin story for the encyclopedia, was there an inspiration for it, or was it just like a natural progression of you knew that you had to do it after this intense
Well,
work?
I think the origin was my past as an editor. With the eye of the world, I began keeping a list of proper nouns. And in that first incarnation, I was so dumb, I didn't put chapter numbers on it, or page numbers, just things out of the book, and I thought I was picking the important things. Wrong. So then with the Great Hunt, I pretty much learned that lesson and began entering things with a chapter number, because obviously the page numbers in the paperback and the hardcover are different, and you'd have to grovel around in the chapter to find whatever it was, but that was pretty easy. And after a couple of more books, Blessed Maria came along, and Blessed Alan came along later, and I turned over, this was called the Raw Glossary, and it got big.
It's huge now.
Yeah, huge, and it's just proper nouns. I had there, and when I was doing it, we had certain things, names of inns, names of ships, animals. So if someone said, you're as dumb as a goose, geese, geese, chapter so-and-so, to keep track of all the animals and birds named, and the varieties of trees and herbs, and that stuff. And then the IEO grew this enormous entry. Tardan, yeah.
Different clans and sets.
Yeah. Putting everybody in there so that it would be easy to check in future and say, but Jim, you said, you know, you started at IEO, not whatever it is you just wrote. So that's this huge document. Well, you know, if there's a huge document, what are you going to do with it? An encyclopedia is insensible.
It was an organizing principle for us, and therefore it should hopefully be an organizing principle for the fans as well.
And has anybody ever seen the 11th edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica? Well, it's notorious as being not very good for facts, but they got, Algernon Charles Swinburne wrote the article on art. And at one point I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful? We could ask people who are writers who like the series, Verin Sadai could write an article on the histories, and actually Nynaeve might write something about healing potions that we could have persona, like the 11th edition of the encyclopedia, but that's too complicated, that's not going to happen. We're going to find out.
If you have questions, we want to make sure to get to help you as much as you're helping us.
Well, let me throw a question out. We don't have to answer it right now. You'd like to cover the material, but start thinking about it, which is what you all would like to see in an encyclopedia.
Well, there's three things for me. I would love more information on Age of Legends. I mean, since we're likely never going to get a book about that, I mean, anything we can know about it that we don't already know would be fantastic. Information about the Fourth Age, I'd love to, so we get some type of poetry and such about it. And then, obviously, anything about the Finns that we don't get in the last two books, whether it's their treaty, the entire treaty, you know, stuff like that. That's what we do.
Clothing styles of the Finns.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Ted?
Well, I know this is your domain, Alan. Map of the IEL waste would be great.
Was it the mat aspect or the map aspect or the
Yeah.
waste aspect?
Because right now, like, I try to guess, like, okay, it took X days to get from Roydian to Cold Rock Tolls, for example, but I want to try to figure out, like, what route Lanfear took to get to Roydian and how long it took, because that's, like, part of the plot, kind of.
Yeah. So you'd like to actually see a visual of the Isle of Waste.
Do you see the kind of the visual representation of this book being similar to the Big White Book with the full color glossy pages in it? Okay. Can you talk a little bit about what the actual book or books might look like? No?
Not yet.
All right.
Yeah.
This thing is not going to go up from us to New York until a year after the final book, by its nature. No idea.
We've got the little
But that-
skeleton, well, it's actually a big skeleton, and, you know, we're working in between on fleshing out, but we can't finish it until
But that's part of the question to you all. What kind of format would you find most useful and interesting? Something more like the big white book, or something more like a real encyclopedia, dictionary, whatever?
Real encyclopedia, I think.
I think it would be.
Digitized and.
I think it would be easier to get the information quickly if it was like an encyclopedia, because everything's alphabetical, but then also grouping the
Relevant things together.
like the IEL and the Shanchan, the Ranlan, that would also be.
A big decision will be what gets a big group entry. And I mean, with the IEL, it's pretty easy to do, because we've got that mostly, and then there'll be lots of cut and tries on exactly what we do about that.
That's it. The big white book does have a fantastic index, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't do the index, but the first editing type job I did for Harriet and Jim was they sent the index and somebody had to go through and make sure it all matched and everything, and I did
I've
it.
already used it.
Did it well.
Yes. I mean, even to the extent that some of the pages are bolded, so you can find the content you're looking for. I really appreciate that. There, and then there, and then there.
What I would like to see, and kind of would be, I have, it's very old, falling apart. I have a Dune encyclopedia. It's about yay thick. It's an A to Z format, but it has, not only does it have the listings, like let's say for IEL, but occasionally you'll see a little small drawing, like maybe quarter drawing or something of maybe an IEL costume, and it gives a very brief descriptor about the race of the IEL, and then it will have little notes saying, see also the tribes, see stone dogs, see maidens of despair, I mean, like an entry on it. It's, right, and so it's cross-reference.
CMC are wonderful. They're the maiden's friend.
But it's an A to Z thing, so, I mean, yes, the index is very useful if you want to go to the very back and look up, say, maidens of despair, but it also gives you other things that may be of your interest that you could cross-reference to, and that would be incredibly useful.
Another good reference, I haven't seen the Dune book, but the Star Trek Encyclopedia, if you're not looking at that, that's great. It's wonderful.
Alan has already said, I really like Star Trek.
It's good. And it has the same thing with little inset pictures or even schematics, and I'm a map person, and maybe even the flags being correct. Blue?
I just wondered if maybe it's out there, I don't know, but I thought the pronunciations in the earlier books were kind of confusing, so a lot of people say it in completely different ways. I was wondering if there was going to be maybe a better pronunciation with the entry maybe in the book.
Well, we haven't gotten that far.
Yeah.
We could certainly use the confusing pronunciations
it seemed
there are.
confusing to me because, like I said,
it wasn't standardized like a dictionary.
Yeah, you use a different system to tell you how to say it.
Look, because none of us are skilled lexicographers.
One that threw me off was O-gear,
Yeah.
because it says O and then it says G-E-A-R, and G-E-A-R spells gear, but I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be the word gear or if it was supposed to be phonetical and then you would say gear, because gear doesn't fit the normal rules. So it's like, is it O-gear or O-gear? And it's O-gear, but
Yeah, but none of us read IPA, so I found that to be helpful the way it was done.
Okay.
For the most part, I mean, that's just me, but I found that way to be more helpful than IPA, because then you've got to look up what those symbols mean.
You can
And who does that?
Right.
If you could include a DVD that will say it for you. I mean, it's out, there's a few pronunciations that, you click and it'll say the word, you can listen to it 100 times so that you can actually get it in your brain. I use those. Yeah.
I would think it would be nice to have some kind of a downloadable format. You said DVD for the voices or whatever. But I think if you could get the encyclopedia on a DVD or a set of CDs or whatever, so that you could download it. I mean, pay the full price, whatever, but because it would be so easy to index and searchable.
We're thinking about that and working on it. I'm thinking the thing to do would be to have it in the back of the book so that you can have the hard and the DVD at the same time. But I haven't discussed that with Mr. Dauro.
Get Brandon to talk to him. We'll do anything for Brandon evidently.
Well, he's very good to Robert Jordan and the Robert Jordan estate. Very good.
But that's something so many people found useful with the Oxford English dictionary.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to search off of a CD, it gives you a whole different way of dealing with the dictionary. If we did a CD, is there anything else people, just fantasize what you'd like to see on a CD in the back of the book?
Clothing, mats, anything pictorial.
Visuals.
Anything visual that you can add to it, hopefully better artistic.
Yeah, I mean, if there's art, obviously we love
Official art.
covers, but if it's official art, or even if it's done by a fan, but you guys,
Approve
approve it and you feel that it is accurate, then, I mean, any visual media is.
Any more detailed explanations that don't come out in text, like where maybe there are two things in his notes, where there's some explanation of what went into it. If there was a DVD and it was like, we decided not to put this in because of X, but any type of interaction kind of where you guys are sitting down talking.
Would that be fun?
What didn't
The
go
way
in,
we
what did
hid
go in.
stuff in the glossaries in the earlier books to make sure you read them. And it was fun to do that.
There and then there.
Interactive timeline, because I know you have those spreadsheets, and maybe you could say, I want to know what's happened on the 14th day of Saban in 999, which is during the main storyline, obviously.
Genealogy trees. Sorry, I'm bumping it. Okay, sorry, we're at the creature.
Compilation of the Corinthian cycle, or the pieces that you have, at least. So those of us who are lazy don't have to flip through tons of books to get all the pieces.
Oh, that's
Prophecies.
Yeah, the prophecies.
Prophecies and dark prophecies.
Yeah.
And the Corinthian cycle. Still
I had somebody, okay, you, and then Tracy in the back.
On the same topic earlier, what else would like to see would be kind of like the deleted scenes. Things that, because I'm sure he had lots of stuff that he wanted to put in the books that was cut out because of not so much space because of
No, that's not so. I was trying hard to cut Eye of the World, and I said, well, this can go, and he said, and sort of did his loyal the Ogier imitation. And I said, why? He said, well, I'm planning to build on that in book 4. And of course he was. And he said, well, okay. So, any cutting was perhaps a paragraph. You know this? Of her.
I actually do, from what you just said, the foreshadowing that he did was amazing. But if probably really hard, but any kind of indicators for foreshadowing to major events would also be awesome. Because he said it numerous times that, not to go to Matt, but who killed Asmodean is there, and he doesn't understand why we can't figure it out. I'd love to know why he said that. Like,
he said somebody online had it right.
Yeah,
that.
We didn't tell them.
That's right.
What I had earlier stuff I'd like to see included. I'm a bit of a historian, and I'd love to see not just the Age of Legends, but also like the Trollop Wars. And just more information on that expounded. Other things like that. Oh, and I'd also, the other thing I'd like to see is also the other areas, Shara, Land of the Madmen, other areas that we've been told we're not going to be seeing in the actual books, but are still going to be a part of the
The hidden history.
Related to what he would like to see, I'd like to see where the individual quotations, the prophecies, the poetry, those things fit in the timeline. Is this a prophecy that occurred during the Falk War, or how these, because they relate?
Take it under consideration.
Yeah, I know.
It's fantasy after all.
It might be 2 years after now.
What talking about, he talked about the prophecy, what I'd like, and y'all were asking about the DVD format, what I would like to see is the prophecies laid out on the DVD side by side by side, like maybe across your computer screen, so that you've got 3 columns with the different prophecies, or the partial prophecies of the Trolloc prophecy, the Seafolk prophecy, the Karakid, so that you can read them and compare them.
Just kind of
Just put them in like a side by side. It's almost like, he says spreadsheet, I don't know computer talk, but a 3-column format, so that you can read them and go, oh, this is what this one says, but this is what the Sinchan one says. I think that would be very interesting and intriguing. Don't know how easy or hard it would be for the DVD.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It could be done. It could be done in a text.
You asked for ideas. We didn't say it was realistic.
Job security. One of the things I actually really did like about the original encyclopedia was the stories about like the Trolloc Wars and the War of the 100 Years, and how the 10 nations were formed. You know, it's just little snippets of stories of the back history. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't canon. It wasn't really directly related to the story, but it fleshed out the world. And it doesn't have to be long or anything, but I really did enjoy those. And then the sections about each of the nations and each of the people, about their cultures and their habits and their dress and how they interact with each other. And that just really added extra layers of depth to the story. Saying, oh, okay, I know why that person is freaking out is because, you know, they're from Terravon and they're all crazy. Those really added to the main storyline to read those in the encyclopedia.
To add on that, it was like, just to use an example in the White Book, The Land of the Madmen, when they talk about it, it's like as told from someone who saw it at this one time, and this is where the one account came from this one person going around it at this one time. You know, it's just like, even just adding those little itty bitty things, and like she said, it just make it that much more interesting to read.
Nice touches.
Yeah.
Back there.
Right. I like lists. So you have your entry for, say, the blacks, the Black Aja, and at the bottom list which Black Aja you would like to reveal to us.
What a spoiler, though. Which is something we have to think about. When somebody gets started or has gotten up to the Dragon Reborn, or buys the encyclopedia.
Yeah, like known Black Aja.
But that is the question.
Well,
is it a useful book if it has no spoilers? Or is it ruining it for people if it does have spoilers? Because that's, you know, it's a decision we've got to.
Well, we don't,
that's
when it
both
comes to
ways.
something online, we already ruined a lot. You know, it's like, the online piece, I mean, it's, because anything you write in the book is going to be online eventually, and it's going to spoil for somebody in the sense that they go looking. So, whether or not they would buy a book, read through it previous to reading the series, it's probably nothing you'll ever be able to control.
But they
now.
might buy the encyclopedia early on.
Yeah, thinking that it's not going to have anything. That's true. That's
Gee,
tough.
all these names, and one something is going to keep things straight for me. And then they get the whole.
The Black Aja list doesn't seem.
What? He died?
The problem though with doing non-spoiler is that where do you stop the spoiling?
Yeah.
Once you're out of chapter.
Part of his whole thing, I mean, I've heard him say, is that he didn't want to end everything. He wants to leave lots of openings.
Yes, that's true.
And you can't and to spoil some things would be closing them, like finishing them off in the encyclopedia, and obviously you can't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not talking unpublished spoilers.
No, yeah.
You know, we're talking.
The material that's
Oh, the
there.
material that's there. Yeah, well, yeah. Then I mean, it's already there. Most of it is already there
Well,
for people to find.
Would an entry for Baron
Yeah,
say.
what's,
What it needs to
she
say.
has a cool owl. I
But
want
then-
that owl.
So I do have a question, and this goes along to what we're wanting there. Do we have more information about the other Forsaken, of the 13 that we have? Did he write anything else about the other Dreadlords or Forsaken that were in the list? These are the top 13 that we have. Or is that a recpo? Okay, assuming we have that information. Assuming we have
I've already
No, so assuming we have that information, I would love to see that information about these other people that certainly are, that were still, that maybe were involved in important things in the Age of Legends or in the 100 Year War that we just don't hear about, if he hasn't.
I would like to kind of have an explanation of everybody's accents, the English, or the English version of, okay, this group of people speak in a southern drawl, these group of people speak in a, Spanish, or, that kind of thing, what their accents should sound like.
Like the Strong Chandler Texans.
Yeah.
And the Illionaires of Dutch, that would be kind of.
Yeah.
We have one back there, and then Stripes, and then. Do you guys have one? Yes, go ahead.
Just a straight opinion from a fan about spoilers. I don't care. The books is so rich, so detailed, so involved, that knowing that somebody died in book 12 doesn't spoil it for me in book 8.
No way you're gonna remember it all. Stripes and Coop, then Backstripes, but.
I've always been fascinated with wind power, so any kind of weavings and how Sidene and Sidar and how they differ, but do the same thing, anything like that, I would really like to see.
So like a comparison and contrast?
Kind of, yeah.
I think it'd be nice just to have an official list of descriptions for the sword forms.
We should go through the DragonCon programming and just see like the panels that have had a lot of interest, and JordanCon too, and pull that together and see where we're drawing people. Stripes back there.
This goes back to the school, I think, also, what she said was, somewhere in the middle books, when you have the chapters where you follow one guy for a long time and you go back to the other one, I went online to look for, who was this character? And then just so happened the spoiler was the very next line.
Oh.
And your eye can't stop from seeing it, so you see it, but like you said, it doesn't take anything away, so you still read the books, and it's like, the impact wasn't destroyed, but like, I can see where your concern is. So if you're gonna do something like spoilers, maybe like divide it into sections, so if you are gonna spoilers, don't have the spoilers anywhere next to the.
That's
Yeah.
But actually, starting, almost everything's gonna be a spoiler for a beginner.
Yeah, and really,
Just put
maybe you could put a note on the first page saying, don't read this till after you've read the list.
I got a really angry note from a copy editor on the Eye of the World when old Fire Eyes gets it. He said, "This is ridiculous. You've got 5 more books to go. You can't kill him now." I just crossed it out. I didn't even show it to Joe.
Most of us don't just read the books once. And so we are already spoiled every time we start over, but we still want an encyclopedia we can use.
Still
And
get
without the
just as
spoilers,
Yeah.
it's not as helpful when we're trying to figure out, now, who is that person who did this?
Well, and half the fun is rereading and saying, oh, I never noticed the significance of this. And going back from the Gathering Storm and finding out about Baron, you can go back and start at the beginning,
Yeah,
which
it's a
I did,
hindsight.
and find all the clues leading up to what you do find out. So,
Yeah,
I don't remember which series it was. It was another series that I read that had multiple books, and they did a compendium, and they organized it so that, like, book 1, the information on the characters in book 1, and then book 2. So they divided it that way. So if you've only read to book 3, you don't go down unless you want to willingly go into book 4 and see the split on it. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I throw it out to you for an idea of organization.
Blue and brown.
I was just thinking that we're all geeks. Oh, sorry. We're all geeks. We're all have diverse views. I personally would like to see what you guys will see. I know we're not going to get that, but this is the sort of thing that eventually we're going to want to see everything, but we can't have it. So
We trust you.
sorry. And we like it.
I guess to go on what you said about the how you can handle the spoilers, you could always just put at the beginning of however you guys are going to do it is like if you haven't read book 4, this is like this is going to contain spoilers. If you haven't read up to book 7, this is going to contain spoilers. Or just like maybe
see also, but a spoiler also.
Maybe symbols that mean like if you have
14 different colors. If you're
I think we just need to call it the spoilerific.
Yeah.
Wheel of Time.
Are you looking at this as a companion for people who are reading the series for the first time, or are you looking at it for the additional experience for the more hardcore fans like we're going to find in history?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And Amy's suggestion is really good. And maybe we could do a system of like Roman numerals in boldface 1 and 2, so it wouldn't take a whole lot of room to break down the information, because we've got it pretty much that way. And that way you could have a choice.
Back to Mary.
What's funny about that real quick is they might even read through it and not even spoil it. But anyways, so one of the ones that I would love to know about is, again, it goes along with the legends and such, any background history on things that were researched. So the board, any other information we have about Mira and her team, what they were thinking, what they went about doing, how they did it, any information we have about who created the portal stones that you can give us, any information about those objects of power that, the horn itself, those type of things. Information you're willing to give that you didn't say, obviously.
Unpublished factoids.
Yeah, all kinds of factual information.
From Jim's brain.
Two things I wanted to give my opinion on the spoilers. I kind of have a tendency to agree with Maria that it should just be spoilerific, because it might just end up getting colossal in size if you worry so much about spoilers. It would probably be better just to give it a disclaimer and say, this is for, if you've read the books, you'll like this as well. And then as far as what I want in the encyclopedia, like you said with the history stuff, there are some people in particular that I would like to know more about, historical figures that have played in. I'd like to know more about Ishara. I'd like to know more about her grandfather, Joel Ramadar, the last king of Al-Shar. I'd like to know more about Eamon, is that how you pronounce it? I'd like to know more about Elaine, Madame Commodrin. Yeah, those people, just the ones that have fascinated us with the little tidbits we drop. We'd love to know more about those people.
Baron's Book of Secrets.
Just without the key to decipher.
There's been major plot lines that apparently were missing. Like who killed Asmo? That's the big question. But apparently there's something that Jim put in the books that were kind of missed, kind of hints that nobody picked up on.
One person did.
One out of all of us. So that would be kind of nice with big letters saying this is what he was trying to do, and this is kind of the mystery thing.
We don't want to know.
Too much information.
Go ahead.
One of the things that hasn't been mentioned in terms of information is one of the things that I'm interested in is the workings of the wheel. So more information on the worlds of If, parallel worlds, Tel'aran'rhiod, and how that's connected with, for example, the skimming space and other sorts of spaces like that within the world. So those are things that really there's little bits of information again throughout the books, but not an overarching picture.
I remember asking Brandon recently, said, can the creator channel the true power? You know, it conceptually is. He gave that answer of that Robert Jordan didn't want to talk about things that people within the world couldn't have discovered on their own. So the Big White Book does this a little bit. I know it's an encyclopedia, but even if it was an encyclopedia of prevailing theories during the Age of Legends, of the relationship between the creator and the Dark One. So, you know, they're talking a little bit about what they thought, you know, were these relationships and how it was working versus maybe in the Third Age, etc. You know, stuff that they inside the world they could have thought about these that we can have versus the external, just tell us how it works type of stuff, which I understand.
Yep.
I just kind of want to echo what Matt said about the stuff behind it and what the lady over there on the far corner said about, you know, how some of the things function. I'm a pen and paper gamer. I know there's a D20 system, but for me it doesn't go into some of, you know, I would like to do like an Age of Legends setting RPG type thing, maybe incorporating some of those rules or house rules from other systems and stuff like that. Any type of the functional information about stuff like, you know, how the One Power works, how this research was done, what was the logic behind some of this stuff like that gives people like me insight into that, how to develop some house rules or something like that for that. So anything like that would be awesome.
Larry, you working on that?
Give it a lot of thought.
One person that I would love to see a nice long entry on personal note is Jan Farstrider. I'd like to see a large entry on Jan and Jan's travels.
Yes.
Kind of a factoid of these are the places and the routes that he hit, and then even if they not just throw speculation and go, it is believed this is what drove him to be a wandering person. It could be a great, you know.
Well, Jane is the author of The Killers of the Black Veil, right? Isn't it? Well, anyway, that's my personal favorite. There's a National Enquirer kind of book about the ideal. That would be great fun to do some exercise. Really.
So what's his name? He might really be in Farstrider. Might be so.
As they all
Right.
work their eyes. It may be nice.
Oh, you want it physically.
It may be nice to see in the DVD format, if not in the actual encyclopedia, a compendium of the fairy tales, a compendium of the stories that Tom tells. We get the tail end, or the middle end, or the front end, and we all know that, you know, they can pertain to modern history, and so it might be nice to see them put to paper.
The songs, the songs are awesome, and the poems, and the chants that the soldiers do, and especially Matt's camps, are great to see them just put together in a, you know, in a format.
Frogs getting on ice.
Go ahead.
More in-depth information about, I mean, the Big White Book does the Forsaken that we do know about. Just any other information you get about them, love that. I mean, we're finding out that this person like killed all these people in this city, you know, killed these, and that type of information really helps kind of raise that character in your mind to summon even more evil. Because there was a little bit of problem I had sometimes through the books, like these were just, sometimes they seem like really stupid people, but not necessarily really evil ones. And so that's what I liked about the Big White Book. It kind of raised the profile of the war in my mind. It's like really, really terrible people, which we didn't have as much in those.
Yep. To add to that, I'd love to know more about Ilyana again. Latra Jose, is that how you pronounce it? Love to know more about Ilyana's.
Along with the first Age incarnation. So,
I didn't hear. There's competition through the world.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I was talking about.
I didn't hear a word of what you
I'm
said.
sorry.
That's okay.
Loose Baron, Aliena, La Trapose, anything about those people would be great. Just the people that we've, been introduced to from the Age of Legends. Essentially, we want to know more.
Characters that are bound to the horn, and basically, okay, how did they get bound to the horn, or what did they do in order for the Angel Ace to say this is a really important person? So, if it's possible, backstory or something like that.
So,
Sounds like a female.
we've given a lot of feedback. Would you like to share? I mean, are there things that you're especially excited about working on for this book? Maria's excited about it. Is Matt going to are you going to make a whole chapter on that?
I don't know that. It's serious.
It's very early.
It's very early. We've done things like make sure that, sometimes when characters introduced, they have only a first name, and then later we find out the last name, and we make sure that both are in there and, in both places. And, did you stand up to that? Marcia here has gone through making sure that, we decided, here's the name in bold, and then period, and, this and that, and she's gone through, and it's very tedious, and she did a great job going through, our skeleton to get that going.
It's my pleasure.
For instance, in the skeleton, Elida Doavrini Aroy is under E for Elida, D for Doavrini Aroyhan, Elida, and Aroyhan in A. You see, so it's part of it, to make the things easy to find, however you think of the character.
Does the bulk of the work fall on just you four, or will you be bringing in a squadron of people now?
Well, by the time we're done,
Yeah.
it may be a squadron, but right now it's us four.
Yeah, an exciting thing to me too. I mean, not only the organization, but bringing so much of Jim's notes to light, because hopefully there'll be a lot of material that was in his notes that was important to him to get a sense of what this character is like and what this situation is like that you never see on the page, but he had to have in his mind as he was writing these scenes and these characters. And some of that hopefully can be brought to light.
Were the movie people wanting any of that kind of information, or were they?
Larry?
All of it. We're going to have lots of discussions about that.
You probably feel like you have too much as it is.
I'll tell you, between Brandon and Robert Jordan, it's a rich canvas for video games, movies, and anything else.
It is tremendously rich.
Also, I don't know if the DVD might be a good medium for the Width of the Staircase. I don't know if they have their own release schedule. If you'd like to share anything on that, I'm sure we, we'll compare.
Well, I had an email from Hunter the other day that they'd gotten hold of some money, so they were progressing to another stage in the editing.
So the Width of the Staircase is an authorized biography of Jim Riggin himself.
A film.
The film, yes.
It was 2.5, 3 hours of Jim on tape in his last summer, in video.
And a lot of supporting interviews with everyone, what a lot of them knew. So if they stumble, they need a venue. I don't know.
That could be.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have 10 more minutes. So a couple more questions. I'm exhausted. Go ahead.
One thing I'd like to see the rules of some of the games, like the Dauro with the Fisher keys, or the rules of Snakes and Foxes written down.
A visual of the game board.
We've got the rules of
I'm
Snakes and
redoing,
Foxes.
I'd like to play that. But I don't know.
Oh, chop.
We have to piece the rules of Snakes and Foxes together, but we have to.
Do we have them all?
We just don't know exactly what the boards look like. probably, but.
Stones.
Yeah.
That's just go.
Stone.
Well, that's pretty much
Pretty much what?
go.
Go.
The game go.
Yeah, one, I don't know if this is just brainstorming obviously, but somebody mentioned, you know, snippets of prophecy or whatever. I think it would be a nice touch if we could see, I don't know if Robert Jordan did handwritten notes or if he typed it in, but, you know, some kind of, I'd like to see, you know, a page of his notebook. In you know, or you know, like a sidebar that has something that he, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, really compelling or really telling. It could just be scribbled notes or just to show the process of creation.
He really worked on the computer.
I believe it.
And I mean, his note taking was on the computer.
Okay.
So then, of course, version 2 replaced version 1. That's the bad thing.
Right. Or seeing, you know, some of the word structure and the use of the language and how he wove such a really compelling story that got all of us just some of the, you know, former say, you know, 2 or 3 sentences, something like that. I think that would be a very nice touch.
His papers are going to the College of Charleston Special Collections. As soon as I get them out of the closet in my bedroom, where we put them when there was a hurricane scare and the office area is low-lying. So I'm thinking of the Fallon Blood manuscript, which is this tall. No, tight. But the only way to cut, I said, we've got to cut this thing. We really do. And he said, well, Harriet, I've already sent Michael Fallon wounded to Georgia to recuperate because it's the only way I could skip the other 25 battles of the Revolution in South Carolina, which is what the book was about. He said, oh, well, in that case, we're going to have to cut 3 lines a page. So there's lots of snowpaper in this. We worked on it for a long, sweaty time one summer. And that would show much more of the work than the Wheel of Time stuff does. Because by then it was computer, not typewriter. And the thing about computer is revisions become invisible. But I'll share something with you. There's an unpublished novel. He never submitted it anywhere. It's called Morgan, and it's a Western. And the prologue begins, I never meant to be a known man, but then I never meant to leave Texas either. Isn't that wonderful? There's Morgan right on the page. But he, in those days, Random House had a contest for Western. I said, Jim, why don't you submit it? He said, well, it needs a rewrite. Well, this stuff was deep in the Fallows or something. I said, well, maybe you ought to go on the 3 Fallon books. So he wouldn't release it. It wasn't up to its present standards.
How long ago was that?
Well, that was done, I think it was written, well, before we married, which was 81, so probably late 70s, somewhere there. And then there's one on yellow paper, which is terrible shit. Cheap paper, that's been long enough so the acid is eating it. But eventually these papers will be at the College of Charleston, and they'll certainly be open for study. They probably need to wear white gloves, these engineers these days.
Maybe we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Mine isn't a question, but I would just like to say thank you to all 3 of you for being here, for sharing your knowledge, your everything with us. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to everybody else.
Absolutely.
Thank you for caring. You're wonderful.
We hope to see you next year. We'll be right back here again for, well, I don't think I have to make the announcement of the theme or anything. I don't know if it's been announced.
It's in the.
Is it in there? Okay, yeah, for Sakon. And our homecoming ball last night will instead be a Dark Friend social.
Oh.
Oh, there you go. Thank you all for coming very much, and if you right after this, I think we have some folk singing perhaps in this room. We'll see. We might do some singing in here if you want to stick around.